Welcome back to Record Rift, where we uncover the hidden stories of history that shaped our world. Today, we journey into the vast steppes of Mongolia to explore the rise of a people whose empire would stretch across continents. Prepare to step back in time and witness the sweeping story of the Mongols, a people forged in the endless steppes, whose ambitions would reshape the world. Now, without further delay, let us begin with Chapter 1. Chapter 1: Classification, Myth and Reality. From an obscure and uncertain beginning, the word Mongol has gone on increasing in significance and spreading geographically during more than 10 centuries until it has filled the whole earth with its presence. From the time when men used it at first until our day, this word has been known in three senses especially. In the first sense, it refers to some small groups of hunters and herdsmen living north of the Great Gobi Desert. In the second, it denotes certain peoples in Asia and Eastern Europe. In the third and most recent, a worldwide extension has been given in this third and the broad sense. The word Mongol has been made to include in one category all yellow-skinned nations, or peoples, including those too with a reddish-brown or dark tinge in the yellow, having also straight hair, always black, and dark eyes of various degrees of intensity. In this sense, the word Mongol coordinates vast numbers of people, immense groups of men who are like one another in some traits, and widely dissimilar in others. It embraces the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, the Manchus, the original Mongols with their near relatives the Tartar, or Turkish tribes which hold Central Asia, or most of it. Moving westward from China, this term covers the Tibetans and with them all the non-Aryan nations and tribes until we reach India and Persia. In India, whose most striking history in modern ages is Mongol, nearly all populations save Aryans and Semites are classified with Mongols. In Persia, where the dynasty is Mongol, that race is preponderant in places and important throughout the whole kingdom, though in a minority. In Asia Minor, the Mongol is master, for the Turk is still sovereign, and will be till a great rearrangement is effected. 5 groups of Mongols have made themselves famous in the Huns with their mighty chief Attila, the Bulgars, the Magyars, the Turks or Osmanli, and the Mongol invaders of Russia. All these 5 will have their due places later on in this history. In Africa there have been and are still Mongol people. The Mamelukes and their forces at Cairo were in their time remarkable, and Turkish dominion exists till the present, at least theoretically, in Egypt and west of it. Not restricted to the Eastern Hemisphere, the word Mongol is still further used to include Aboriginal man in America. Thus, this great aggregation of people is found in each part of both hemispheres, and we cannot consider the Mongols historically in a wide sense unless we consider all mankind. In the first, that is the original and narrowest sense of the word, it applies to those Mongols alone who during 12 centuries or longer have inhabited the country just south of Lake Baikal and north of the Great Gobi Desert. It is from these Mongols proper that the name has at last been extended to the whole yellow race in both hemispheres. The word Mongol began, it is said, with the Chinese, but this is not certain. It is certain, however, that the Chinese made it known to the great world outside, and thus opened the way to that immense application now given it. The Tang dynasty lasted from 618 to 907 and left its own history. In that history the term Mongol appears as Mongku, and in the annals of the Khitan dynasty which followed the Tang Mongku Li is the form which is given us. The Khitans were succeeded by the Golden Khans, or Qin emperors, and in the annals of their line the Mongku are mentioned very often. The Mongols began their career somewhat south of Lake Baikal, where 6 rivers rise in a very remarkable mountain land. The Onon, the Ingada and the Karelin are the main western sources of that immense stream the Amur, which enters the Sea of Okhotsk and thus finds the Pacific. The second 3 rivers, the Tula, Oron, and Selinga flow into Lake Baikal, and thence, through the lower Angara and Yenisei, are merged in Arctic waters directly in front of Nova Zembla. These 2 water systems begin in the Khenti Khan Mountains, which have as their chief elevation Mount Buran. The 6 rivers, while flowing toward the Amur and Lake Baikal water the whole stretch of country where the Mongols began their activity as known to us. There they moved about with their large and small cattle, fought, robbed and hunted, ate and drank and slew one another during ages without reckoning. In that region of forest and grassland, of mountains and valleys, of great and small rivers, the air is wholesome though piercingly cold during winter, and exceedingly hot in the summer months. There was subsistence enough for a primitive life in that country, but men had to fight for it savagely. Flocks and herds when grown numerous need immense spaces to feed in, and those spaces of land caused unending struggle and bloodshed. The flocks and herds were also objects of struggle, not flocks and herds only, but women. The desirable woman was snatched away, kidnapped. The good herd of cattle was stolen and afterward fought for. The grass-covered mountain or valley, or the forest with grass or good branches, or shrubbery for browsing was seized and then kept by the men who were able to hold it. This stealing of cattle, this grabbing of pasture and forest, this fighting, this killing, this capture of women continued for ages with no apparent results except those which were personal, local, and transient till Temujin the great Mongol appeared in that harsh mountain country. This man summed up in himself, and intensified to the utmost the ideas, strength, temper and spirit of his race as presented in action and life up to his day. He placed the Mongols on the stage of the world with a skill and a power that were simply colossal and all-conquering. The results which he won were immediate and terrifying. No man born of woman has had thus far in history a success so peculiar, so thorough and perfect, so completely acknowledged by mankind as the success won by Temujin. There is in his career an unconquerable sequence, a finish, a oneness of character that sets it apart among all the careers of those mighty ones in history who worked for this life and no other, and strove for no object save that which is tangible, material and present. Success of such kind and success so inner mouths that a common intelligence might yearn for it, but have no more chance of winning than of reaching the stars, or of seeing the sun during night hours. The career of this Mongol is unique in the world, unapproachable, since its object was unmixed and immediate and his success in attaining it was so great that it seems, we might say, superhuman. The account which is given us of Temujin's origin is a myth tale, excepting a few generations directly preceding him. Genealogy in the form of a myth tale is no exception in the case of any people, no wonder. It is the rule and inevitable, the one method used by each primitive folk to explain its own origin. All early men in their own accounts are descended from gods who are either divine mythic animals, or elements, or forces, or phenomena which become later on the progenitors of nations, or their totems. The first mythic parents or founders of Temujin's family were a blue wolf and a gray doe. These two swam across a lake, reached the river Onon near its sources and settled down permanently at the foot of Mount Buren, where a son called Batachi was born to them. Ninth in descent from Batachi were Duva, Sower, and Dobin. The former had only one eye which was fixed in the middle of his forehead, but with that eye he saw beyond 3 mountain ranges. Once these two brothers climbed up Mount Buren, and were gazing at the world from the top of it when Duva Sower beheld many people moving down the Tungilai. "There is the wife for my brother, unless she is married," thought Duva. "Go and see her," said he then to Dobin. Dobin went to the new people straightway and learned that the woman was single and that her name was Alangoa. The moving people were dependents of one Horilartai. In time before that Bargadai, who owned Bargajin on Lake Baikal, had a daughter whom he gave to Horilartai of Horn to Madden. From this marriage came Alangoa, born at Ali Yusin. They had left their old place since the hunting of ermine and squirrels had been stopped there. Horilartai removed to Mount Buren, where game was abundant. He joined Shinchi Boyun, the master of Mount Buren, and began the clan Horilar. Thus Dobin found Alangoa, who bore him 2 sons, Bugandai and Bailgun Atai. Duva the one-eyed had 4 sons. The 2 brothers and their 6 sons lived in one company till Duva's death. After that Duva's 4 sons deserted their uncle, and founded the clan known as Dorbian. One day while Dobin was hunting he found in the forest a man roasting venison and straightway asked meat of him. The man kept one flank and the lungs, and gave the remainder to Dobin, who tied what he got to his saddle, and started off homeward. He met on the road a poor man and a small boy. "Who art thou?" inquired Dobin. "I am of the Malish Boyandai," said the poor man. "I am in need, give me venison, I pray thee, I will give thee my son in return for it." Dobin gave the man a deer leg, took the boy home, and made him his attendant. Some years passed, the boy grew, and Dobin died. The boy, now a man, served the widow. while a widow Alangoa bore 3 sons. The eldest was Buga Hadijai, the second Tusalki, the third Bajuankar. The 2 sons born of Dobin said once to each other, "Our mother has no husband, no brother of our father has ever been in this yurta, still she has 3 sons. There is only one man in the house, he has lived with us always, is he not their father?" Alangoa learned that the 2 elder brothers were curious concerning the other 3, so one day she called in her 5 sons and seating them together gave each one an arrow and told him to break it. Each broke his arrow. She then bound 5 arrows firmly together and commanded to break them. Not one of the brothers could break the 5 arrows when tied in a bundle. "Ye are in doubt," said she then to her eldest and second son, "as to who is the father of my 3rd, 4th, and 5th sons. Ye wonder, and with reason, for ye know not that a golden-hued man makes his way to this yurta. He enters through the door by which light comes, he enters in through the smoke hole like sunshine. The brightness which comes from him fills me when I look at him. Going off on the rays of the sun or the moon he runs like a swift yellow dog till he vanishes. Cease talking idly. Your 3 youngest brothers are children of heaven, and no one may liken them to common men. When they are Khans ye will know this." Alangoa instructed her sons then, and said to them, "Ye all are my children, ye are all sons of mine. If ye stand apart like those 5 broken arrows it will be very easy to break you, but if ye keep one MD and one spirit no man on earth will be able to injure you, ye will be like those 5 arrows in the bundle." Alangoa died soon after this talk with her children. 4 of the brothers took what belonged to all 5 of them, counting the youngest a weakling and simple they gave him no property whatever. He, seeing that they would not treat him with justice, said in his own mind, "I will go from this place, I will leave them." Then mounting a sorry roan horse with galled back and mangy tail, he left his 4 brothers and rode away up the Onon to live at some new spot in freedom. When he reached Baljanala he built a small yurta, or hut at the place which seemed best to him and lived in it. One day he saw a falcon swoop down on a woodcock and seize it there near his yurta. He plucked hairs from the mangy tail of his horse, made a snare, caught the falcon and trained it. When the wolves drove wild beasts toward the yurta in hunting he killed them with arrows, or took for himself and the falcon what the wolves left uneaten. Thus he lived the first winter. When spring came the falcon caught ducks and geese in great numbers. Beyond the ridge of Mount Duilian, which was there near his yurta, flowed the Tungilai, and at the river lived a new people. Bajuankar, who went to hunt daily with his falcon, discovered this people and drank in their yurtas, mare's milk which they gave him. They knew not whence he had come, and he asked not who they were, though they met every day with good feeling. At last Bajuankar's eldest brother, Hadijai, set out to find him if possible and reached the Tungilai, where he saw the new people with whom Bajuankar was in friendship. "Have ye seen a young man with a mangy-tailed horse?" asked he. "On the horse's back are white spots which are marks of old gall sores. 6 we have seen the young man with that horse. He has also a falcon. He comes here each day to drink mare's milk, but we know not the place of his yurta. Whenever wind blows from the northwest it drives hither as many duck and goose feathers as there are flakes in a snowstorm. He must live with his falcon northwest of us. But wait here a while and thou wilt see him." Soon they saw the young man coming. Bajuankar became reconciled and went home with Hadijai. "A man is complete who has a head on his body," said Bodu Anchor to himself. And aloud he said as they traveled, "A coat is complete when a collar is sewed to it." The brother said Nathanji on hearing these words for the first time. Bajuankar repeated the saying. "What dost thou mean?" asked Hadijai. "Those men on the river," said Bajuankar, "have no head in their company, great and small are all one to them. We might take their ulus one very easily." "Well," replied Hadijai, "when we reach home we will talk of this. If we agree we will take the place." The 5 brothers talked over the plan and were willing. Bodu Anchor led them back to the village. The first person seized by him was a woman. "Off what Stockardhow?" asked Bajuankar. "I am of the Charchiots," answered the woman. The 5 brothers led all the people to their own place. After that they had cattle, they had also attendants to wait on them when eating. Bajuankar took his first captive as wife, and she bore him a son from whom the Balan clan was descended. Bajuankar took another wife and by her begot Habichi, who in time had a son Mainyan Toden who took as wife Monolin, from whom 7 sons were born to him. The eldest of these was Katchi Kuluk, and the youngest, Nachin. Monolin loved command. She was harsh in her household and severe to all people. With her Mainyan Toden gained great wealth of all kinds, and lived at Nush Arji. Though there was no forest land near his yurta, he had so many cattle when the herds were driven home, that not 5 ells of ground within eyesight could be found with no beast on it. Mainyan Toden departed from life while his 7th son was an infant. At this time the Jalaires, that is, some descendants of Dobin and Alangoa, who had settled on the Carolyn near the Golden Khan's border, warred with his people very often. On a time the Golden Khan sent his forces against them. The Jalaires, thinking the river impassable, sneered at the enemy, and taking their caps off fell to mocking and shouting, "Would ye not like to come over and take all our horses and families?" Roused by this ridicule and banter, the enemy made rafts under cover, and crossed the Carolyn quickly. They rushed forward and defeated the Jalaires. They slew all whom they met or could find, not sparing even children. Most of the Jalaires were slain, except some who a village or community had camped in a place where the enemy did not reach them. These survivors found refuge at Monolin settlement, where they fell to digging roots for subsistence, and spoiled a large space used in training young horses. The widow was enraged at this trespass. She was riding in a cart when she saw it. Rushing in with attendants, she trampled down some of the people, and dispersed them. Soon after this, those same Jalaires stole from the sons of the widow a large herd of horses. When they heard of this robbery, those sons hurried off to recover the animals. In their great haste, they forgot to take armor. Monolin sent their wives on in carts with the armor, and she herself followed. Her sons were lying dead when their wives brought the armor. The Jalaires then slew the women, and when she came up they killed Monolin also. The descendants of Katchi Kuluk were all dead now except the youngest son, who was living apart from the others at Bar Gudgeon on the eastern shore of Lake Baikal, and Kaidu, his eldest son's only offspring, a small boy who was saved by his nurse, who hid with the child under firewood. When news came to Nachin that his family had been slaughtered, he hurried on to Nush Arji and found there some wretched old women with the little boy Kaidu, and the nurse who had saved him. Nachin was anxious to examine the Jalaire country, recover some part of his brother's lost property, and take a stern vengeance on the Jalaires, but he had no horse to ride on this journey. Just then a sorrel stallion from the herd that had been stolen by the Jalaires wandered back to Nush Arji. Nachin took this beast and set out alone to reconnoiter. The first men to meet him were 2 hunters on horseback, a son and his father, who were riding apart from each other. Each had a hawk on his wrist, and Nachin saw that both birds had belonged to his brothers. "Hast thou seen a brown stallion with mares, going eastward?" 99 asked he of the younger man. "I have not," said the stranger, "but hast thou seen ducks or geese on thy journey?" "I have seen many," replied Nachin. "Come, I will show them to thee." The man followed Nachin, who at his own time well selected turned on this Jalaire and killed him. He fettered the horse, tied the hawk to the saddle, turned and rode toward the second man. Upon reaching him he asked if he had seen a brown stallion and mares going eastward. "No," said the man, "but hast thou seen my son who is hawking here near us?" "I have seen him," said Nachin. "He is bleeding from the nose and that delays him." Nachin then killed the second man and rode along farther, taking with him the hawks and the horses. He came at last to a valley where many horses were grazing. Some boys were herding the beasts and throwing stones for amusement. Nachin from a high place examined the country, and since there was no one in sight he went into the valley, killed the boys and urged on the herd to Nush Arji, leading the 2 hunters' horses and bringing the hawks with him. Nachin then took his nephew and the old women with the nurse, and drove all the horses to Bargajan. There he lived for some years, and reared and trained his young nephew, who when old enough was made chief over 2 groups of Mongols. Later on other groups were connected with these 2. The Jalaires were crushed and enslaved by Kaidu and Nachin, who returned at the right time to Nush Arji. In that chief place of his family he acquired many cattle, and laid the foundation of Mongol dominion. Nachin, as Mongol story depicts him, is one of the few men in history who were not self-seeking. He saved the small remnant of his family which escaped from the Jalaires, and was for some time the real guardian of the Mongols. He saved the boy Kaidu, and, seeking no power for himself, turned every effort to strengthen Anji his nephew. From that nephew, Kaidu, are descended the greatest historical men of his people, men without whom the name Mongol might not have risen from obscurity to be known and renowned as it now is. Nachan had 2 sons, Urudai and Manhudai, from whom are descended the Units and Manhuts, 2 tribes which under Quilder and Churchadai saved the fortune of Temujin in his most parade battle at Kalinkin. Kaidu had 3 sons. The eldest was Bashan Kordakshan, the second Sharhalingyu, the third Chaujin Orteji. Kaidu's eldest son had 1 son named Tumbanai, and died soon after the birth of that single descendant. Kaidu's second son had a son named Sengen Bilg, who had a son Ambagai, and from the strong son, Ambagai, were descended the Tajuts. Kaidu's second son took his eldest brother's widow, and from her had a son, Baisutai, from whom came the Basits. Kaidu's third son had 6 sons, who were the founders of 6 clans among Mongols. Tumbanai, son of Bashan, Kaidu's eldest son, had 2 sons, Kabul and Sinsekalai. Kabul had 7 sons. The second of these, Barton, had 4 sons. The third of these 4 sons was Yesagai. Kabul was made Khan, and though he had 7 sons he did not wish to give rule to any one of them. So he gave it to Sengen Bilg, the father of Ambagai. Kabul the Khan, son of Tumbanai, was renowned for great courage. His fame reached the Emperor of China, who had such regard for this chief that he sent envoys inviting him to the court as an evidence of friendship, and with the concealed hope of making a treaty through which the Mongols might act with North China. Kabul made the journey. The emperor received him with honor, and entertained him with the best food and drink in the country. But, since the Chinese were given to deceit very greatly, as Kabul thought, and attacked each opponent from an ambush, he feared wiles and most of all poison, hence he avoided food and drink and withdrew from a feast under pretexts, but returned later on when relieved of suspicion, and fell to eating and drinking with very great relish. The Chinese were astounded at sight of his thirst and his hunger. "High heaven must have made him to rule," exclaimed they, "else how could he drink and eat so enormously, and still have an appetite and be sober?" But after a time he seemed tipsy, clapped his hands, reeled toward the emperor, seized his beard and stroked his ear, to the horror of ministers, who cried out at once, and were ready to rush at the Mongol. The Khan turned then to the emperor and smiled very coolly. "If the Golden Khan holds me guilty," said he, "let him know that the will of my hand is to blame, not my own will. My hand has done that which displeases my own will, and I condemn my hand's action." The emperor was calm and deliberate. At that time he wished above all things to wheedle his visitor, so he reasoned in his mind as follows: "If I punish this man, his adherents, who are many, may rise and begin a long war with me." Hence he kept down his anger, and commanded to bring from his treasure house silken robes, embroidered in gold, of right size for the Mongol. A crown and a gold girdle were brought with them. He put these on Kabul. Brother, Sain Tejin, was the cause of involving the family in a terrible blood feud. Sain Tejin fell ill and they called in a shaman of the Tajuts to cure him. He died notwithstanding the art of this shaman, who was slain either on his way home or soon after, by the relatives of the dead man. This caused a great battle between the Tajuts and Sain Tejin's adherents and relatives, joined now by Kabul's sons, who favored the cause of their uncle. In this battle Kaidan met a Tajut in single encounter, split open his saddle, swept him down from his horse, and wounded him dreadfully. The Tajut, who recovered only after a 12-month of suffering, began a new struggle as soon as strength came to him. Kaidan brought horse and rider to the earth, each wounded grievously. Though 10 mounted men rushed at the victor, he so used spear and sword on them that he came out in triumph. Thus began the great blood feud which later on Temujin used with such deadly effect on the Tajuts and Tartars. Between Lake Bayer and Lake Kulan is a river. On this river a large group of Tartar tribes lived at that period. Ambagai, son of Sengen, went to find a new wife at Lake Bayer but was seized by some Tartars and sent to the Qin emperor, who took his life very cruelly. Before his captors had set out with Ambagai he sent home this message: "Tell Kuchula, 4th son of my cousin Kabul, who has 7 sons, and Kaidan, one of my 10 sons, that I, who ruled men, am a prisoner and must die in great suffering. And remember these words of mine, all of you. Though ye were to wear every nail from the fingers of each hand, and lose the 10 fingers on both hands, ye must avenge me. The Golden Khan, in return for offenses committed against him by Ambigai's relatives, had him nailed to a wooden ass, flayed alive, and then chopped into small pieces slowly, beginning with his fingers and toes, till his whole body was finished. Okan Barka, Kabil's eldest son and a brother of Kuchula, had been captured by the Tartars, sent to the Golden Khan, and put to death in the same way as Ambigai. This was done because Kabil had killed the Golden Khan's messengers. Before Ambigai was tortured, he sent Bulgaji, his slave, to the Golden Khan with this warning: "It is shameful to kill me. I was seized most perfidiously, I am here without reason. Thou kill me, all chiefs among Mongols will rise and avenge the injustice." The Golden Khan paid no heed to the message, but after the hideous execution he sent Bulgaji on courier horses to Mongolia with the command to tell all there that Ambigai had been nailed to the wooden ass, his skin stripped from him while living, and his body then chopped into pieces bit by bit. On the way Bulgaji passed through the land of the Durbans, who would not give horses, and no matter what he said they took no note of him. When his horses were so weary that they could go no farther, he left them, went home on foot, and told all to Kaden, whose son, Tuda, told the whole tale to Ketula and Yesagai, his nephew. Kaden, Tuda and Yesagai held a council immediately and resolved with many Mongols to avenge Okan Barka and Ambigai. Kuchula was chosen Khan then to lead the expedition. They held a great feast when the election was over, and all became grandly excited. They danced round a wide-spreading tree with great energy, and stamped out a ditch of such depth that they were hidden to their knees in it. Kuchula assembled all warriors who were willing to go, and marched against China. The Golden Khan's forces were defeated, and routed with terrible slaughter. The Mongols took booty of unspeakable value, took all that men could bear with them, or that horses could carry. They came home filled with delight, bringing woven stuffs of all species, every kind of rich furniture, weapons and implements, and driving before them immense herds of horses, and large and small cattle. While on the way home, Kuchula, when passing through the land of the Durbans, went to hunt with a small force of followers. On seeing these people, the Durbans assembled a numerous party and attacked them. They killed some, and scattered the others. Kuchula, left alone, saved himself by fleeing, and drove his swift horse through a swamp to the opposite edge of the soft place. The beast stopped and stuck fast there. Kuchula stood on the saddle and sprang to firm ground from it. The Durbans, seeing him on foot, were well satisfied. "Oh, let him go," said they. "Of what use is a man when his horse is gone?" Then, while they stood looking, he pulled his horse out of the quagmire, mounted, and rode away in their presence. The swamp extended so far on either hand that they cared not to follow. Kuchula's surviving attendants returned to the army, spread news of his death, and declared that the Durbans had killed him. His warriors reached home somewhat earlier than the Khan, and since he had not appeared on the road and his attendants said that he had been killed by the Durbans, Yesagai made a funeral feast for their leader and went to Kuchula's wife to announce her husband's death and with her drink the cup to his memory. On appearing before her he began to lament and weep bitterly. "Why hast thou come?" asked she, "and why art thou weeping?" He told the cause of his grief and his coming. "I believe not a word of all thou hast told me," said the woman. Would Kuchula let Durbans kill him, Kuchula whose voice is like thunder in the mountains, a voice which reaches high heaven, would Kuchula let common men kill him? He would not. His delay has another cause. He is living. He has stopped for some work of importance, he will come later on. But the warriors and Kuchula's attendants felt sure that the Khan had been murdered. When Kuchula had pulled his horse out of the quagmire and ridden away safely, he was savagely angry. "How have those vile, wretched Durbans brought me to such trouble," raged he, "and driven off all my servants? Must I go home empty-handed? No, I will not leave these places unplundered." Then he rode till he found a brown stallion, also a great herd of mares and their colts with them. He mounted the stallion, led out his own horse which ran forward, then drove the mares which followed the saddle beast. Riding farther in the steppes he found nests of wild geese. Dismounting he took off his boots, filled the great legs of them with goose eggs, remounted and rode away home on the stallion, holding the boots and driving the mares and their colts to his yurta. A vast crowd of people had assembled to lament and show honor to Themamoriof Kuchula, and now, astonished at his sudden arrival, they rejoiced beyond measure, and turned all their sorrow and wailing into a feast of triumph and gladness. "Huh," said the wife then to Yesagai, "did I not tell thee that no Durbans or other men could bring down Kuchula?" After his great success against China, Kuchula moved on the Tartars and punished them unsparingly for sending Okanbarka, his brother, to the Golden Khan for destruction. But now broke out afresh the great hatred of the 10 sons of Ambagai for Kuchula and his brothers. Those 10 Tejut brothers fell on the 6 surviving sons of Kabul and killed 5 of them, killed all except Barden, who burst his way out of the murderous encounter with 3 serious wounds in his body and fled with 4 attendants. His son Yesagai, who had been hurled to the earth from his saddle, sprang up quickly and, though only 13 years of age, sent his spear through the body of a Tejut who was mounted, brought him down dying, sprang to the empty saddle, rushed away and caught up with his father. Through this wonderful promptness and skill he was able to save himself. Barton's wife, Meryl Kayak, fled on foot from her yurta with 3 other sons, Mengu, Nagin and Daratai, and reached her wounded husband. The Tejut triumph was perfect for a season. Barton's power had departed. He died soon and gave place to his son, a young hero. This son was Yesagai. The name means number 9. His full name was Yesagai Bahadur, the 9th hero. He was 9th too in descent from that youngest son of Alan Goa, Bajuankar, who rode off alone from injustice. At this time the tendency had increased very greatly among chiefs of Mongol clans to make other chiefs subordinates or assistants. This was true specially of men descended from Kabul and from Ambagai. If rival or smaller chiefs would not accept the position a conflict resulted, attacks were made by small parties or larger ones, or through war or poison. The weaker men, when ambitious, were swept from existence. The continual interference of China by intrigue or by arms, or by bribery through titles or presents, through rewards to individuals, or dire ghastly punishments where punishment seemed more effective, did something also to strengthen and consolidate the loosely coherent society of the Mongols, and thus helped unwittingly the work of strong men seeking power north of China. Yesagai, through activity and keenness, succeeded in winning cooperation sufficient to undo the great Tejut triumph. Kabul's sons again got the primacy.